Welcome to the Operate Intelligently podcast. This is Brian McDonald at Dude Solutions, and today we have a great episode for you. We are going to look at movies and maintenance. And joining me is Paul LeChamp, Senior Manufacturing Advisor at Dude Solutions. Paul, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be here.
Paul, we had a discussion after the last time you were on the podcast of looking at different parts of pop culture where maintenance and operations management kind of has a role in the storytelling. And because of that, you and I kind of came together and picked a few movies that we wanted to kind of discuss how, maintenance has a big role in the storyline and is critical to the kind of mission of the different characters and stories.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about this in the past, it sounded like fun, and it turned out to be more fun than I even thought to go through and find movies where maintenance is a theme in the movie. And it was fun to relive some classics that I've enjoyed, some older than others, but you can really see how maintenance or maintenance-related issues are a central theme. And there's some pretty valuable lessons that I think translate to today's manufacturing maintenance environment.
So with that as a preface, let's go ahead and get into our first movie. So the first film we picked was Apollo 13, and this is the 1995 Ron Howard film about the ill-fated Apollo 13 mission for the moon. This was not a very glamorous mission. It was supposed to be a routine flight, and it ended up turning into a rescue mission after the spacecraft has massive internal damage due to an oxygen tank exploding. And one of the things that is really neat, I think, about that scene specifically is just kind of how Ron Howard does a great job of kind of following the wires and all the different parts to show you the actual damage that happens.
Yeah, to this day, anytime I ever hear of a problem in my car or anywhere, I can picture that scene.
So let's go ahead and share a little bit of the audio from that scene.
Thank you very much, Houston.
We got a couple of housekeeping procedures for you. We'd like you to roll right to 060 and know your rates.
Roger that. Rolling right. 060.
And then if you could give your oxygen tanks a stir.
Roger that. Hey, we've got a problem here.
What did you do?
Nothing. I stirred the tanks.
Whoa. Hey. This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
So probably one of the more famous movie lines ever quoted, Houston, we have a problem, coming from the actual transcript of the Apollo 13 mission. And Paul, you had some interesting observations you thought about, what happens and what is happening during this film.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite movies, 1995, so it's pretty old. And rewatching this and rewatching this scene, I love how it goes from a very routine environment. You can see the operations folks back on planet Earth, tired, yawning, going through the sort of daily routines of obviously an amazing event of a spacecraft, in space, but very routine. And then all of a sudden you have this moment of a failure, and it changes everything. And how appropriate is that for the manufacturing world? You're running normal, and then bam, it crashes. So I mean, there's absolute direct correlation. But when you look at it, some of the things that come to mind from my experience around manufacturing, maintenance, and CMMS, one of them is the concept of having spare parts, critical spare parts. Now, obviously, this is a spaceship, and I don't know that they can have every redundancy of every single part. But we are not in space in the manufacturing environment. But and would that have stopped this problem? No, they had the problem, but it just reminds you, if you're familiar with a movie, they have to go and build all these things out of spare parts to help remedy the situation, and critical spares so you can get back up and running quick, I think is a great message for this event here. Another one that it's kind of ironic or funny, and it isn't really funny, but downtime is a killer. How many times do we use that phrase, that downtime is a killer? And we're referring to profits, or we're referring to the ability to produce or goods and services, and downtime is a killer. In this case, I mean, downtime literally could have been a killer, and in other tragic events around aircraft and space travel, it literally is a killer. But so you could extend that concept there. But I think probably the most appropriate part of that scene, which you don't see in the movie, but what would have happened if this was a real life on planet Earth manufacturing example is how do you solve this problem? The crisis management that goes into this. The movie does a great job. It's absolute fantastic drama. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it strongly. But behind all of that work that goes on in a manufacturing facility, when they are having a major problem with a production asset, all hands on deck, is you've got to have a system to manage, to deal with all these moving parts. Literally the parts, the people, the skill set, the contractors, keeping production in the loop through notification. And it really comes back to when you have a problem, you have to have a good system to help manage that problem. And they don't really talk about that in the movie, but you know it has to be there. There's too many people involved.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, just the thought of building those spacecraft is monumental, but also, maintaining and repairing them in real time while they're orbiting the Earth. It has to have something that's going to keep track of all the different moving pieces and parts, and making sure that the technicians and mission control can do what they need to do, especially in a rescue operation, such as the Apollo 13 story. And I also like how you mentioned the critical spares versus downtime. It reminds me of the old adage of you don't want to keep too much inventory on hand because that's like money sitting on the shelves. But those critical spares that you want versus the cost of what your downtime, how much are you losing in downtime versus how much is that inventory costing you sitting on the shelf. So I think that's a great kind of flip side of the coin for each one of those.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Are you looking for a way to get inspired about your work as a facility or operations professional? Join us at our annual Maintenance and Operations Conference, Dude University in Raleigh, North Carolina, May 5th through 8th, 2019. You'll be able to attend educational sessions about your day-to-day work, meet professionals from across the country that work in your and other industries, and enjoy food, friends, and fun in the Dude's hometown. If you register this year, you can take advantage of our all-inclusive Dude deal. Learn more and register online at university2019.com.
So that brings us to our second film that we picked. And in this one, we went to probably one of the more popular movie series or sagas out there, and it's Star Wars Episode 4, The Empire Strikes Back. In my opinion, by far the best Star Wars film.
Debatable, but I'll give it in my top 3.
I'd have to say that within the original 6, because the other ones are so much different. But anyway.
No, I'm with you on that. Absolutely.
But yeah, so one of the things we picked was the running storyline that's kind of illustrated within this film of the Millennium Falcon, and that's Han Solo's ship. And every time they try to escape, the ship kind of is failing, or it's not really starting up and going as fast as they need. It takes a while for it to get there. And we thought this was kind of a very interesting example of continuous maintenance within the central storyline. So I'm going to play the scene where Princess Leia is kind of getting on Han's case that his spacecraft isn't that great, and maybe it's not the best way for them to escape.
Prepare to adjust the light speed.
They're getting closer.
Oh yeah? Watch this.
Watch what?
We're in trouble.
If I may say so, sir, I noticed earlier the hyperdrive motivator has been damaged. It's impossible to go for light speed.
So that's one of the ones. And then the other quote we liked was how Leia says, "This bucket of bolts never going to get us past that blockade." And Solo says, she's got a few surprises left in her. Just wait.
I also love how C-3PO is always the bearer of bad news on this. how we're never going to get out of this thing alive. I think that's a fantastic example of a culture where failure is absolutely accepted. The listeners of this podcast can't see the video, but I'm sure everybody knows it's an iconic scene But you can see the look on Leia's face when he's, leading up to the fact that he's gonna get him out of there, and she has absolute look of doubt on her face, and then a look of, okay, I told you so, as soon as you hear that hyperdrive not actually working. But there's a lot of environments, there's a lot of manufacturing organizations where failures and downtime and lack of a preventive maintenance, proactive environment is an accepted culture. When you're living it, it's easy to say in our little conversation right now how that doesn't make any sense. How can anybody accept an environment like that? But when you're living it day to day and you don't have a good system or a good plan to get you out of that, you just kind of accept the fact that things are going to fail and we're going to have to call maintenance. They're going to have to come fix it. And hopefully, we're not going to suffer fatal consequences as a result of that. But it's terrible for morale. It's certainly terrible for productivity and in turn profitability if you have a sort of firefighting, things are going to fail, it's going to happen mentality. And I think this scene does a great job at showing that. A couple other things that come to mind for this is stretching the life of your assets. The Millennium Falcon is famous for being a vintage ship that is old looking and dirty, but it's supposed to get the job done. But you've got to do good maintenance on your older assets for them to continue to be effective. And clearly the Millennium Falcon needed to be effective right there. And it couldn't be. Was it because of lack of preventive maintenance? Who knows? Maybe Chewbacca skipped a couple of PMs from their CMMS system and Han wasn't paying attention to the notifications reminding him to do it. Who knows? But to stretch the life out of your older assets, it's going to require a healthy dose of preventive maintenance. And that requires a culture that's going to do that work in front of them, in front of the problems. And then my final point on this is the same as the previous one. Here we have two spacecraft related scenes, and I'm going to come back to my downtime as a killer. Your hyperdrive doesn't work and you can't escape Darth Vader and the other fighters that are chasing your ship. Well, downtime in this case literally can be a killer. So I think there's a direct correlation between that and say downtime of your assets, especially if you've got aging assets and you want to keep things going. That's so important, profitability. You don't want that downtime.
And I really love your example or your kind of takeaway on accepted culture of failure, because I think it does hurt morale and productivity to the point where people even they kind of go into that mindset of I really want to get this done, but I know by 11 o'clock this is going to fail, or this thing that keeps breaking down is going to work, or we really haven't addressed how to deal with a certain process and kind of get the failure out of it or try to mitigate it as much as you can.
Yeah, you got to change that culture. Software is going to help, but it really comes down to the human aspect of embracing a proactive environment and budgeting the time to get ahead of the firefighting mode, to get into the mindset of your management and your technicians that it doesn't have to be that way. It might be a little painful to get out of it, but it pays off wonderfully. And then you got a better chance of escaping, these TIE fighters that are shooting at you from behind.
I would have loved if Leia pulled up on a mobile device and showed Solo that, by the way, you've missed out on 3 of the past 5 maintenance schedules on this bucket of bolts, and that's why it's not good.
That's what today's managers need to do, but that's an excellent example.
So again, thanks, Paul, and thanks for listening. We will share out the movie clips in the show notes, and until next time, I'm Brian McDonald at Dude Solutions.
Enjoyed part 1 of Maintenance in the Movies? Then make sure you stick around and listen to part 2, where we'll dive into more films and talk about how maintenance is essential in their storyline.
Thank you for listening to the Operate Intelligently podcast. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a review, and you can even email us at dspodcast@dudesolutions.com.